Ahmed Shihab-Eldin. He's a journalist and filmmaker joining us from Kuwait City. Ahmed, good to have you on TRT World. So firstly, what are your thoughts on this latest poll?
Well, I'm not sure that the world actually understands the gravity of what we're witnessing in Gaza. Because if they did, it would not be happening simply. And if they're watching mainstream media in the US or the EU, they're not seeing the videos I'm seeing every single day for the last 20 days. So polling aside, I think it's important that we just highlight the level of dehumanization and the US and EU leaders that find different creative but equally offensive ways to dismiss it, to deflect it, and deflect any criticism or accountability away from Israel. It's not just dangerous, it's not just dystopian, it's demented. I know you want to talk about polls, but I find polls to be relatively useless, if I'm frank with you, because we have people like President Biden who's protecting Israel from, being held accountable for what is clearly genocide.
But
I mean,
Ahmed,
there's a special place in hell for the people who are doing that.
This is something that the US has been doing for decades. You're calling this a genocide. It's something that the US has protected Israel from for decades. So how does that change? How does the world go about trying to protect Palestinians who are dying every single day in droves?
Well, I think it's a great question, and it's not me who's calling it genocide. I would hope that you call it a genocide too. I mean, you're watching the same videos as me, and I think that's the thing. We have to call a spade a spade. And I think it starts to change when we see, as we have this week, tens of thousands of college students at more than 100 campuses across the US walking out yesterday to protest, chanting Free Palestine, end the occupation, and calling for a ceasefire and an end to the military support for Israel that you said rightfully has been going on for decades. I mean, the coalition against Israel's occupation, their war crimes, their genocidal warfare in Gaza is growing, and it's growing fast. And it's in no small part thanks to courageous young Jewish Americans in particular who've managed to see the light despite the very real brainwashing that they've endured. And just to inform your audience, there's a new documentary called Israelism that is doing screenings at college campuses and free screenings online, which I highly recommend because it exposes not only the crimes of Israel, but US complicity. I mean, the walkout was not only organized by, Arabs or Muslims. It was a broad coalition of groups, including the anti-war youth organization called Dissenters, the National Organization for Filipino Students as well. And they're urging universities themselves to divest from companies like Lockheed Martin that manufacture the arms that the US government sends to Israel to wage this war of genocide. What is troubling, if I may very quickly, is, we saw the Senate in the US unanimously adopt a resolution condemning pro-Palestine student protesters as, quote, in solidarity with Hamas and calling them anti-Semitic. I mean, the resolution calls to, quote, fully and completely support Israel in its war on Gaza. And what's troubling is everyone from Bernie Sanders to Rand Paul, adopted it or supported it. And I think this just goes to show that they're passing these sorts of things because they recognize the power of this broad coalition that's growing because,
is that also just, sorry to interrupt you there, Ahmed,
Please.
but is that also just the power of the people? Because when you're talking about what's happening in the United States, we're also seeing multiple rallies all over the world, and I'm not just talking about the Arab world, all over the globe, where people are supporting Palestinians. They're supporting the Palestinian cause, and they're calling on their own governments to do more to condemn Israel's attacks in Gaza, especially those governments who are, of course, more pro-Israel. How much pressure, if any at all, does this actually put on governments to change their stance and to call out what is being seen, what we are seeing right now on our screens? We have colleagues and, many of our colleagues have family in Gaza and Palestine, and it's absolutely heartbreaking to listen to what they have to go through.
It is heartbreaking, and I think, as I just mentioned, I think it does put pressure on these leaders when it is sustained, when it is, a sustained movement that's mobilized and organized. And that's why we're seeing the criminalization of any individual or community in Germany, in the US, in Europe at large, criminalizing voices that stand up for other human beings' basic human rights. I mean, that's literally what's happening. And, we've seen a lot of genocidal calls from not only elected leaders in Israel, but echoed by other people, like such as the French president Macron. I mean, I'm going to say it because it's true. There is a special place in hell for the people who are responsible for this genocide, including a self-proclaimed Zionist. He has not only provided the weapons that Israel's using to commit genocide against Palestinians, he's not only shielding Israel from any condemnation or accountability, but yesterday he took the dehumanization 20 steps further by disgracefully questioning the number of human souls that have perished at the hands of the Israeli apartheid regime. He said he has no notion that the Palestinians are telling the truth about how many people are killed. And there's a surgeon in Gaza who spoke earlier, I think yesterday, Ghassan Abu Sitta, in response to Biden. He said, and I'm also, like him, trying to figure out what is the quota for Palestinian blood that the US administration wants for it to actually force the Israelis into a ceasefire. And by the way, in the same breath that Biden insists that Israel is following the rules of war, although anyone with an internet connection and who can spell Gaza and press enter knows that Israel is violating all rules of war and violating them on a daily, even hourly basis.
And we have actually spoken to many people, many international human rights lawyers who say that's exactly what is happening. Human rights violations are happening, international law is being broken, but once again, Israel is not being held accountable for that.
Yeah, and if I may just tell you, I mean, the Pentagon has repeatedly insisted Israel is following the laws of war as well. And when a reporter, Tom Squitieri, asked the Pentagon press secretary today to outline which of those laws that we keep hearing about is Israel following, he was told simply, I refer to you to Israel. And when he asked his follow-up question, the press secretary said, it's a waste of time to even discuss the fact that Israel is committing these war crimes. And I just want to say, because I'm a journalist and you are yourself as well, let's not forget that in history, we've learned that those who target journalists are doing it because they are aware that they are guilty. In 21 days, Israel has killed 34 journalists. The US told Qatar to tone down its reporting on Al Jazeera English in terms of following this genocidal warfare. And less than 24 hours later, Israel targeted a building, killing the family of Al Jazeera's Gaza bureau chief. Now, we have journalists being targeted. We have hospitals and medical workers being targeted. We have the United Nations being targeted. The impotence of the United Nations is more shameful than it has ever been in history, given the fact, and this is a fact, that Israel has killed at least 57 United Nations staffers in Gaza. In one day, they killed 15 UN staffers. And the Israeli ambassador has the gall to attack the Secretary General of the UN and cancel UN worker visas to Israel. I mean, for a moment, imagine if Russia had killed 57 UN employees in Ukraine. What would have happened at the UN? How would the US and EU have reacted? Would we have endless conversations doubting those deaths? Has President Biden ever doubted the way Ukrainians count their dead? And just lastly, if I may, because we're talking about the offensive and the genocidal death toll in Gaza already in just a few weeks. When Ukraine was occupied and bombed by Russia, the entire global community mobilized within days, within hours. Where is the global solidarity now? It is in the streets of every capital city in the world. And as you said, I mean, this list of 7,500 Palestinians, these are not statistics. Palestinians have been so dehumanized in Western media that when Israel wipes out entire families, which is the definition of genocide, somehow, because we hear from elected officials from Israel on Western airwaves that these are human animals, that these people, there are no innocent civilians in Gaza, that there is no humanitarian crisis in Gaza. These are phrases that are coming out of the mouths of Israeli elected officials. Imagine there was a leader of any other country in the world who tried to peddle these lies. Wouldn't it be exposed? Wouldn't it be, as it is being exposed, wouldn't there be action? Why are Palestinians not seen or felt when we die? Why are our dreams not just deferred, they're deleted? Do you know why? It would take you 10 minutes to scroll through all the names listed of Palestinians killed by Israel. It will take 1 second to realize just how many of them are children, and it would take a lifetime to ask yourself why more people didn't do something to stop this. And we have yet to speak about what's happening in the occupied West Bank, when all the world's eyes are on Gaza. And I think it's really important we do. Maybe I understand we might not have time now, but I do want to just share with your audience today.
I'm afraid,
Army back.
Ahmed, we have actually run out of time because we are going to go to the occupied West Bank and speak to our reporter there. But we really do appreciate your thoughts and your insight on what is happening in Gaza as we look right now at the live pictures coming from there, where